Good morning, guys. Thanks for joining us this morning on our YouTube channel. My name's Stuart Dennis. I'm one of the Pro Video specialists here at WEX. And this morning I am joined by Chris, and bear with me one sec. Cool. Joined by Chris from Blackmagic, who will be going through the Pocket Cinema camera range with us. That's a range of cameras that's really developed over the last 8 years or so since the first one came out that was Super 16. We're now looking at cameras that have Micro Four Thirds sensors, Super 35mm sensors as well, along with a huge range of frame rates and codecs to choose from as well. So what we're going to do today is Chris is going to go through the cameras themselves and their features. At the end of the session, we're going to take some questions. So just ask your questions in the box below. Try to keep your questions to technical/creative questions. If you have questions about delivery dates and stuff like that, then email me directly. Just email provideo@wex.co.uk, and we can talk about that on a one-to-one basis. So if you can keep your questions mainly to these cameras and the capabilities of these cameras and the way that you want to use them. So yes, cool. I'm going to hand over now to Chris and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Yeah, thanks for having us today, and thank you for everyone for getting involved. I hope you enjoy it. So, as Stuart said, I'm Chris Javin, and I'm Technical Sales Specialist here at Blackmagic Design EMEA. I'm excited today to bring you a brand new webinar that's focusing on the recently announced Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K Pro. This camera expands upon the foundations of the incredibly successful Pocket Cinema camera family, taking many of the existing technical features and boasting some new additional features that are more commonly found on our larger cameras, and they provide you with a wealth of versatile options. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to be going through today, I've just freaked out a little bit, excuse me, apologies for that. So just to give you an idea of what we will be going through today, we are going to look at the existing Pocket family features, the applications and notable differences, and how they influences the design of the 6K Pro that's obviously recently been released. We will go through the 6K Pro features, so we'll discuss some of those innovative new features and ergonomic additions of the 6K Pro. We'll then go through the core shared technology through the range, so our ethos when designing all of our cameras and what unites the whole Blackmagic camera family. And then we will finally focus on some real-world user stories that show different usage scenarios and target markets that the Pocket family works within. So let's begin by introducing the 4K and 6K and how basically these cameras have impacted the design of the 6K Pro. So the 4K and 6K Pocket Cinema cameras were developed on the foundation of our hugely popular and successful Pocket Cinema Camera HD. And we can see that the main technological push behind the Pocket 4K camera came from the need from basically the Pocket camera family needing to shoot internal 4K resolution. So that was the big push on the upgrade that you can now see in the current range. Both cameras are based around the same accessible design, having the advantage of a small and lightweight 750 grams polycarbonate body, yet producing crisp Blackmagic cinema quality images in a market that had a real need for this kind of camera in this kind of form factor. The entire Pocket family offers similar core technology with an easy to use menu system, 13 stops of dynamic range, dual native ISO and internal B-roll recording. Unique sensor technology, and this basically creates a package that's ideal for creatives needing a range of options whilst retaining critical features that you've now come to expect from our cameras. The Pocket 4K has the benefit of a light, compact, lightweight lenses, obviously keeping the overall package small due to its 4K 4/3 sensor size and MFT lens mount. The 6K Super 35mm sensor allows for better depth of field control, more prominent bokeh, and the ability to scale or reframe from a 6K resolution. With the new sensor comes a new native EF mount, enabling a wide range of superb EF glass, making it very accessible and hopefully helping to support our existing customers with that existing EF lens glass. So going into more detail on the different sensor formats between the existing 4K and 6K, you can clearly see how the sensor size has dictated the type of lens mount that we've used on each of the cameras. This obviously ultimately defines your lens choice, and the key difference between the Pocket 6 and the Pocket 4 being that sensor size and lens mount. The 4K is built around the smaller, tried and tested full 4/3 format with a Micro Four Thirds lens mount and a full resolution of 4096 by 2160, so DCI 4K. The Pocket Cinema Camera 6K, on the other hand, changes this for the larger Super 35mm native 6K sensor with a built-in EF standard mount and a max resolution of 6144 by 3456, giving you that 6K resolution. So creatively and aesthetically, the combination of EF lenses and a Super 35mm sensor affects the image in terms of a more prominent and deeper depth of field and amplified bokeh due to the larger sensor. This is often considered more cinematic and desirable for many customers. The Super 35mm and EF lens of the 6K unleashes endless possibilities for cinematic coverage and images due to the vast array of high quality glass available. However, the choice between cameras comes down to your preference, your lenses, your production, and your aim. The Pocket 4K has a fantastic user base of creatives using the MFT mount for lighter weight lenses, keeping that overall package nice and small. Some productions, such as run and gun or documentaries, that prefer the 4K because of the deeper depth of field that the 4/3 sensor offers. This means that basically keeping subjects in focus and reducing issue of blurred subjects keeps that down to a minimum, and obviously really suits that type of production. You can see there the difference in that depth of field with the 6K giving that much shallower depth of field, a much more critical focus area, and giving that really nice roll off of focus towards the back end of the shot. So obviously we've just discussed, the 4K and the 6K and where they sit and the type of productions that kind of will be using that camera. So in addition, what we've obviously recently released is the 6K Pro. So in addition to the 4K and the 6K, which are still available, we've now added an additional 6K Pro to the range. This has added some heavily requested ergonomic additions to improve both functionality and operability. So the new 6K Pro maintains the key features of the popular and successful Pocket 6K. Despite it being a new camera, we've retained the same core technology between the 6K and the 6K Pro, only updating and improving what is already an incredible camera. You can still expect the same 35mm sensor. You can still expect the same dual ISO, 13 stops of dynamic range, the same high frame rates, native 6K recording, internal B-RAW, and Blackmagic OS, which is the operating system that runs through all our camera range. What we've done is increase the versatility and operability and overall ease of use of the camera through these additional features. Again, these hail back to a lot of customers coming back to us and asking for these developments. So we're hoping that both of these additional features help the creator and allow the product to stand apart, yet still fitting in nicely with the rest of the Pocket Cinema camera lineup. So one of the big additions for the 6K Pro, and something that, again, has been really prevalent within customer feedback, is that we've designed our new internal motorized NDs that are in the 6K Pro. And basically, the customer request came from people that wanted to avoid having to rig their compact pocket cameras with a large matte box, external filters, rod systems, which then can obviously hinder the operator in certain shooting scenarios, and obviously does complicate things with lens choices for, again, run and gun style stuff. The NDs operate via a new slide system, so the controls are positioned on the rear of the camera and use a plus and minus button. And they range from a clear to a 2 to a 4 and a 6 stop ND. Creatively, the NDs feature infrared glass and have been specifically color balanced to match our sensor, allowing the creator to use the NDs without any worry of aesthetic changes to their production. You have the option to alter your depth of field whilst maintaining an acceptable amount of light and without the hassle of adding additional accessories. So I believe this to be a real key feature within the new 6K Pro. It's something that takes the camera into a new level, and I think really helps keep that form factor down. And again, gives you really good creative options now internally in the camera without additional rigging to really kind of look creatively at f-stop exposure, and what you're creatively trying to get out of that scene, and that will obviously affect how you look to expose it. A little short but sweet note here is just to mention the addition of an extra high quality and reliable mini XLR port. So whereas the 4K and the 6K have one XLR port, we now have the option of two on the side of the camera with rubber caps covering all of our IO ports for additional protection. These can actually be detached now whenever required, and the mini XLRs are a professional connection, yet perfectly fit the size of the camera and maintain the same Pro preamps as previous models. These analog mini XLRs are switchable between mic with phantom power support and line level up to 14 dBu. Combine this with the one 3.5mm stereo input, which can be used for time code, an integrated stereo microphone and a built-in mono speaker. There is a range of possibilities now to be capturing audio, making this iteration of the pocket camera ideal for documentary or fast-paced dialogue scenes. We also now have the new 5-inch ultra bright HDR touchscreen monitor with an intuitive user interface, easy to touch sensitivity and increased brightness of 1500 nits. Whereas going from the 6K and the 4K, you've got a 700 nit screen on there. So over double the nit brightness within the 6K Pro. This makes it an ideal companion for outdoor use and bright sunlit or in tricky lighting situations.
Chris, sorry to jump in, but that's quite a big thing. That's a big thing for Blackmagic now, to have a screen that can be seen in daylight.
Absolutely.
Something that everyone's been looking for a long time. And from everything I've seen so far, it looks really impressive. And the fact that it flips out as well is something that people were looking for. So if anyone is watching and has felt perhaps that they've been let down a bit by certain other older Blackmagic products, like the original cinema camera, for example, where you couldn't really see anything in daylight, this totally changes it, and you'll be able to use this in a way that you would with an external monitor. So
absolutely. And again, it hails back to that idea of us trying to keep, any sort of potential rigging down on the camera. So again, people trying to, create sort of custom sun hoods and things like that for the older models, where again, trying to, block out any of that sunlight to get the contrast on the screen. Hopefully now this gives access, to users to be using straight from the camera, no additional rigging. And again, the reason for the pocket cinema camera, we know as a lineup, is to keep that form factor down. So the more we can do to help the customer to do that, I think is really beneficial. Just to touch on that, obviously what you get in the touchscreen are very much like what you do in the 4K and the 6K. You can control your frame rate, shutter angle, ISO and white balance straight from the screen, making it a very efficient tool whilst on set, with the added bonus of the true HDR color fidelity and reproduction. So again, giving a very much more critical look of what the camera is seeing, and allowing for that high, HDR images to be displayed, and really sort of work hand in hand with that exposure and what the camera is seeing. Stuart did just touch on it then, and I'll just go into a little bit more detail. But yes, the LCD now works on an articulating sort of mount, and you get a 135-degree tilt function on that mount. Obviously, we've just touched on the fact we've got a nice higher bright screen. So again, for outdoor viewing, it makes it a lot easier. Now also having this functionality with the screen to be able to tilt it also will really help in those tricky situations where you've maybe mounted that camera really high up or really low down, or again, where you're just trying to get a bit more contrast to the screen and get rid of any sun that's hitting down on it. So you get a 90 degrees upwards tilt, and then a 40 degrees downwards tilt. So again, for that high angle and low angle stuff, we've hopefully made it a lot easier to keep that rig of the camera down. So again, you're not having to wire out to different monitors to be viewing that camera, because again, it's in such a tricky position for sort of on-camera monitoring. So in this feature, you'll see the capabilities for allowing a 6K Pro to be operated in those more difficult conditions and positions. And again, this reinforces our aim of boosting functionality and operability to the end user. So this was the real focus of this camera. Again, touching on, that core technology being very similar between the 6K and the 6K Pro. It is very much functionality and operational sort of progressions that we've looked to build into this Pro model. One of those being the new Pocket Camera Pro EVF. We can now obviously attach this onto the camera. It is an optional accessory with the camera, so it doesn't come with the camera in the initial purchase. So do make sure if you are looking at that, it is an optional extra. This operable design was founded on a combination of customer feedback and also through our well-received 1080p OLED Ursa EVF. Customers love the ability to focus more intently through an EVF, removing any additional light that may affect the image on screen, while simultaneously allowing more critical focus control over the scene at hand.
Chris, would you compare it to the Ursa Mini EVF in terms of its optical quality?
Yes, yeah. So it's an OLED. It's an OLED EVF. It doesn't. I don't think it has the full 1080p resolution on there. Right. But yeah, again, for the form factor, and again, looking at the size of it, it's an incredibly crisp EVF. Yeah, with
it could well be then probably the best EVF out there right now for cameras of this price point. We see OLED in mirrorless cameras. We don't see it so much in cinema cameras, not built in anyway, or not as an optional extra that's so well designed to sit inside the body. That's exciting because I know that a lot of people like to shoot that way. A lot of people like to frame that way. And that extra point of contact when you're shooting handheld, having it up to your eye with one hand underneath the lens, the other hand on the side of the camera. It's a really valuable thing to add, to have something where you've got that third point of contact. It means that you can keep the camera much more steady.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it just adds to the versatility of the camera as well for different, different conditions, different environments, and hopefully just gives, the end user a lot more options to how they want to operate the camera. And again, you can see how adaptable the EVF is for that close handheld work and run and gun style. It is a thumb screw connector. So again, you don't need to worry about anything to do with kind of having tools on set or anything like that to be, detaching or attaching that EVF. So you can see that it mounts directly onto the top of the body. So the camera does come with a cover on that top part where the EVF mounts, and you just remove this and that will allow for the EVF connection. Yeah, so just hailing back, obviously Stuart mentioned the other EVF. It doesn't have a full 1080p resolution. This one boasts a 1280 by 960 resolution, and it has a plus and minus 4 diopter for diopter range, and uses a proprietary connector on the top of the camera, which can be tightened or released via that thumb screw. So again, just hailing back to the fact that tools on set, you can just be doing this completely without tools. Other exciting features include a digital focus guide, so you can basically pull that up in the EVF to set that diopter and make sure that everything is nice and in crisp focus down the EVF. You get a built-in eye-cut proximity detector similar to the Ursa EVF, which switches off the display screen when not in use to save on power consumption. So again, it is clever in that respect. So when you go to the EVF, it will switch the screen off and vice versa. All of the power and data of the new EVF is via the proprietary high density pin connector. So it is a proprietary connector for this camera. So it's not something that we see, especially not at the moment, working with anything else. Touching on what you get inside with the EVF, you do also get different size silicon eye cups, providing left and right eye options to allow for different functionality and adaptability for any shooter. So it comes with an eye cup mount on it. You then get a slightly larger medium eye cup mount without a left and right sort of position, and then the left and right as well. So again, just pushing on that usability and ensuring that every end user can get a really good, nice, comfortable feel down that EVF. Okay, so another great addition that's obviously seen in our other Pocket Cinema cameras, but a brand new Pocket Camera Pro battery grip. with a new addition of the optional pocket camera battery Pro Grip. So again, it is an optional extra. You have larger 2-cell capacity, allowing for approximately 1 hour of recording per battery, depending on your camera settings, which is an improvement over the 4K and 6K. The new battery Pro Grip, yeah.
Sorry, Chris. So just to clarify then, in terms of when you put this new Pro battery grip on, you get what length of time recording will you get?
So we've tested this. I think it is at 6K 25p. And I think it's about an hour to each battery. Okay. So the actual drainage and power time is an increase on the older models, and the actual design of the battery grip is different and allows for more functionality with the way it's used.
That different design, does that mean that it isn't compatible with the older models as well?
Yeah,
is it a different fit?
It's not compatible.
All right, cool. So it's designed for this camera. Good.
Yeah, for this camera and this camera alone. So if it, don't be buying this obviously with the idea it would work with the older 4K and 6K. You can see just from the image on the left-hand side, the actual battery grip, it's actually a pin connector now. So basically on the older ones, it was the kind of internal dummy battery that went up into the camera, and then you got the 2 batteries obviously in the sled. What you get now is 3 batteries. There is intelligent software inbuilt in the camera so that it drains the 2 batteries in the sled before it drains the internal battery that is in that hand grip on the camera. This allows for hot swapping. So it basically means that you won't ever have to remove that internal battery. You can just be hot swapping those ones in the sled. Make sure, obviously, the battery in the grip is fully charged, and you can just hot swap those sled batteries out. And as soon as those new ones are in, again, that intelligent technology will know to drain those sled batteries before the internal battery. Okay, just... Yeah, so basically just to really kind of give obviously the reasoning behind this. Again, customer feedback was a biggie on power consumption, and obviously making sure that they've got enough access to power for longer shoots. So what we're hoping with this new addition and the intelligent way of draining the batteries is that basically this becomes perfect for customers that are looking to shoot those longer periods. And when you're out in the field, with limited power supplies, hopefully having some extra pre-charged batteries for that hot swap will allow for some really good continuous efficient shooting. So here you can see how the grip screws in seamlessly into the bottom of the camera. It also features the non-slip hand grips that are seen on the camera body and is designed to perfectly match the polycarbonate of the camera body, with the ability to charge the batteries in the grip via the camera's 12 volt DC power connection, should you wish to do so. So if you are working with that and you are plugging into power, it will be charging as well as obviously powering the camera for the shoot. So again, another good way for certain locations, maybe on the day of filming where you've got a little bit of access to power, you could be juicing those batteries for, maybe in the afternoon you're out on location with no access to mains. So a really nice feature that again just adds to that usability of the camera.
Chris, that 12 volt input, I assume then that we could always get, not that I'm saying that, your battery grip isn't awesome, and it is, but let's just say that someone already has a set of V-locks or something like that. We could always go straight into that 12 volt input with a cable coming from a V-lock. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, like a D-tap. Yeah, D-tap. It is a two pin DC connection, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'd go into that rather than, wouldn't be like a dummy battery that goes into the base. It will be more, you will go into the 12 volt input on the side.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, that would depend on the cable. Obviously, having the connection for that, and obviously allowing for the right amount of power to be juiced into the camera. But yeah, we've seen it on the 4K and the 6K. There are a lot of third-party battery options out there for V-lock and things like that. I've
not heard the phrase "juiced" before. I think I'm going to have to start using that as a way of describing powering things up. I like that. Thank you.
No problem. Well, if that's all you take from today, then happy days. No, but yeah, no, great. So moving on. We'll have a look at the shared technology of our cameras and explain how nothing has been compromised within these. All of our cameras are based on the same design and shared technology, aiming for operability and simplicity, regardless of what camera you are shooting with. What makes this the best camera range is best described by what lives inside our cameras. We saw a position in the market for an accessible, small form factor camera that produces amazing images. We've shown you the products, so let's now show you the core technology. So speed and efficiency is integral to operate in our products. The Blackmagic OS is simple and intuitive to use, with the ability to update firmware in the field and provide more functionality. Our bright full HD touchscreens are easy to frame, focus, and shoot accurately with. There's no need for menus and rotary dials, with purely fast and logical access to show only what is needed on screen, whether you want to change the resolution, frame rate, ISO, or view our library of LUTs and presets.
Chris, just to
Yes.
say to all the guys watching right now, it's not an exaggeration to say that Blackmagic's touchscreen menu is probably the most simple, straightforward camera menu there is on the market. And I don't know why other manufacturers don't just do the same thing and still insist on us going into menus and sub-menus and drilling further down. But it's an absolute joy to use on the other Pocket cameras. So are there any massive changes with the new camera on that menu?
No, absolutely not. No, it's using the exact same OS system and giving you the exact same menu system. The only difference will be is that when you attach the EVF to the top of the camera, you now get an EVF menu within the menu system that allows you to obviously change settings within that. But no, it's the same, really efficient, really easy to use touchscreen menu that like you say, I think, again, what we're really driven for with these cameras is the operability and ease of use. And that menu system for me really shines in that we have stripped it back to what's important and what you need to be thinking about. And again, we've given quick access to all those features. So again, when you're out run and gun, you need to be quick and efficient on shoot. You can be changing things on the fly really quickly and simply.
I always say to our customers that that's the benefit of having a pure cinema camera. So many people shoot mirrorless, and there's a video camera, but it's behind a photo camera, and you've got to try to get to it. Whereas with a camera like this, you can see all of the settings that are relevant to your video shooting straight away, and change the things that you need to change when you're out and about. Really good to see that the same menus being used in this one.
Yeah. And again, this camera is designed from the ground up for video. We're not trying to bend, a more photographic based camera to do the video. We've completely come at this from a video cinema point of view. Finally, it is worth mentioning that you can control the camera remotely via Bluetooth on either an iPad or iPhone through the designated Blackmagic app. The same on the 6K and 4K as well.
Do you get an image preview that way, or is it just the menu that you see on the app?
It's just the menu, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. I can double check that for you there, Stuart. Okay, so again, like the 4K and 6K, it not only does Blackmagic design camera offer the non-proprietary CFast and SD media, but also USB-C recording. So the USB-C ports enable you to record directly to external USB-C drives or flash drives, utilizing a more cost-effective media solution with greater size capacities than smaller media cards. This is vital when shooting corporate or documentary footage, which can require long periods of time shooting. An added benefit of USB-C recording is that it also speeds up the post-production process. And you can edit or even grade straight from the drive that you've recorded to by simply unplugging it from the camera and then plugging it into your workstation and begin editing. Power is also supported via that USB-C, enabling you to charge batteries in the camera should you wish to do so. The only difference here between the 12-volt DC connection is that you do need to make sure that the camera is switched off for that USB-C to charge the camera. So just be aware of that. You can't run the camera live simultaneously with the USB-C being obviously juicing a bit of power in there. Okay, so a key example of our technical development is in our dual ISO sensors, only available in our Pocket cinema camera family. So it was developed as customers in this market space were looking to shoot in lower available light at higher resolutions. We built our own proprietary sensors beginning in 2015 with the Ursa 4.6K, and what we've learnt, we've been improving upon ever since. We combat the low light through our dual native ISO, which goes up to 25,600 for HDR images and incredible low light performance. With native low gain and high gain at 400 and 3200 ISO respectively. As a result of this, you get flexibility and adaptability of choosing your desired ISO to retain integral dynamic range, sensitivity, and latitude. So how do we bring all that together? Well, we use our own internal proprietary format, which is Blackmagic RAW. This integrates our technology between camera and post-production, optimizing color fidelity through the chain. And I think this is a really important thing where we have created a pipeline here. And what that allows us to do is have much more control over the way we're developing and the way our stuff can then communicate together. It's seen through our product pool in other areas. But again, we do like to try and design a full system that allows for the end user to work with our products in a Blackmagic pipeline that, again, allows us to have more control over, you know, what is capable and the kind of through communication between those different elements.
Cool. This is the story. Sorry, Chris. This is the story, I think. I think this is the story behind. This is the real story with Blackmagic's Pocket Cinema cameras now. Aside from being low cost and having loads of features and all that sort of stuff, it's the ability to shoot with a compressed RAW codec that can be used in DaVinci. And everything I read, everything I see, and everything I hear about Blackmagic RAW is overwhelmingly positive, particularly against competition. And that's the exciting part of using a camera like this, I think, is not just getting 6K off a Super 35mm sensor, having it that inexpensive. I think the really exciting part is having the flexibility of this RAW file. And this as you've said already, this connected sort of color science that works with everything, everything talking to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible codec. It really is. And again, because we've designed it with DaVinci in mind, and the cameras are now being designed with DaVinci in mind, we're looking at that cross communication and how we can do more within that pipeline. And again, you know, the image quality that you can get, you know, for the data size that Blackmagic RAW is, I think, you know, is incredible. And again, shows where we're looking to push. You know, we're really thinking about what is it we can do to make the end user's experience better, and again, get higher quality images, you know, in a more efficient workflow. So it's first and foremost designed for preserving and the protection of that dynamic range and color precision image information without discarding color and image detail, which results in a substandard clip. B-roll processes only the sensor data and relies on post-production to debayer and create the video information. Secondly, efficiency in recording is key. So compared to other RAW formats, which are often a bucket of pixels that demand a lot of processing, we work hand in hand with our sensor technology, again, hailing back to that idea of creating that pipeline, leveraging the processing power in the camera to help reduce the file sizes and deliver the same bit depth, dynamic range and control as RAW, with information encoded and saved in that metadata. Finally, we have the ability to complete the chain by finishing and working within DaVinci Resolve in post-production, the world's most used and well-renowned grading software, which is now unified by our Generation 5 color science. So looking at that, our new 6K Pro is built around the Generation 5 color science, which will also be included in the 4K and 6K. It was developed with DaVinci Resolve technology and IP processing within the camera. Our color science underpins our sensor performance, reproducing extremely accurate skin tones, image clarity, and beautiful lifelike colors like never before. Through our ever-evolving development, we fine-tuned our color science to allow creators to match both archive and current footage to perfection. Color fidelity and color reproduction are the most important qualities of an image, helping to create that richness. Building upon the popular Gen 4 color science, Gen 5 is a fantastic addition, as it can easily be manipulated and worked with within DaVinci Resolve to produce vivid colors and accurate representations of what the camera is capturing. We feel you cannot compromise on any of the unifying technology of our cameras, the ease of use and operability of the Blackmagic OS, the available light possibilities from our dual ISO sensors, the efficiency and image preservation of our Blackmagic RAW, and color fidelity and reproduction from our Generation 5 color science really makes this a well-rounded package. These 4 areas encapsulate what you need in a camera to create cinematic images, something which is shared throughout our core technology. So which camera is right for you is a real good question to be looking at now. We've kind of gone through, you know, the 4K and the 6K, the core technology, the upgrades of the 6K Pro, but which one would be the right decision for you? And obviously there's a lot of factors that come into this. So with the new look additional features of the 6K Pro, it's time to ask that question. Now, the short response is that it primarily depends on what technology you're looking for in the unique project or scenarios that you're going to be faced with. However, for a more in-depth answer, let's look at the primary differences that separates the Pocket family. So this diagram shows 6 areas that you would consider as a camera operator when choosing your desired camera. This isn't exhaustive, but typically you would look at frame rate, dynamic range, ND filters, resolution, sensor size, and rolling shutter. First and foremost, the Pocket 4K strength really lies in its faster rolling shutter readout of approximately 16 milliseconds, resulting in a more sensitive sensor with better handling of available light situations. This combined with our dual ISO helps easily combat this issue whilst retaining latitude. So again, looking at that 4K as, you know, MFT mount with smaller, cheaper lenses available. You've then got, you know, a better, faster rolling shutter speed readout, which means that again, if you're using available light sources and you're not able to invest in, you know, your own lighting kit, again, it really shows that MFT 4K Pocket Cinema camera, where it sits, and again, can be a great starter to get working, you know, in that cinematic style with B-RAW, you know, not having to pump in loads of additional light sources that you've had to go out and buy, and just trying to use, you know, additional available light sources that you have access to.
Chris, I
Yes.
think it's worth just pointing out as well that Micro Four Thirds mount that's on the front of the camera is quite easily adapted to other lens mounts, and there
Absolutely.
are quite a large range of mounts out there that will let you get something close to a super 35mm field of view. So something like a Metabone speed booster, for example, will let you put EF glass on the front and get you the same depth of field characteristics as you would be getting shooting on a super 35mm camcorder. The cool thing about the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, as well as you mentioned just now, is that it's in terms of rolling shutter, it's less obvious than it is on other cameras because of the size of the sensor. If you combine the size of that sensor with then a speed booster and an EF mount lens, you're going to end up with something that performs like a super 35mm camera, but with a better rolling shutter, or rather a faster rolling shutter, which means that this camera is probably the most suited to the kind of fast gimbal work that we see. Obviously the other cameras handle it well as well, but if you're going to shoot a lot of action, let's say you're doing, I don't know, some sort of extreme sports or something like that, then you'd probably be looking towards the 4K, the 4K version of the camera because of that faster scan time.
Yeah, and you've got to also, you know, think about, you know, that deeper depth of field. So if you are using the MFT lenses for certain stuff, and again, what I really enjoy with this camera range is creatively, you've got so much options, so you can really think about what it is you're shooting and use the camera to kind of position yourself as best in that situation as possible. And I think that's seen without, you know, through the whole range of cameras that we've got within the Pocket Cinema camera range now. Okay, I'll just carry on. So obviously the smaller 4K third sensor, 4K 4/3 sensor, the smaller size and resolution are often better suited for documentaries and ENG shooters that prefer that deep depth of field and a wide range of lightweight, small Micro Four Thirds lenses that the sensor brings. Finally, we have the Pocket 4K's frame rates of up to 4K in native, up to 60 in native 4K or 120 in HD windowed to create cinematic slow motion effects within a compact form factor camera. This is within the 4K. As mentioned previously, we've seen that the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K has been used for a wide variety of applications. Where we tend to see the 4K is predominantly includes event videography, where the demand nowadays is more for a cinematic approach. Online content creators use it for YouTube content and other platforms alike, due to its ability to work with our ATEM streaming products. So that with a recent firmware, there has been a lot more communication that can now work between our pocket cinema cameras and ATEM range. And finally, we work very closely with film school and universities, acting as an educational camera for students. The ease of use and accessibility of the camera really makes it an obvious choice for creatives starting out within the industry. Moving swiftly on to the Pocket 6K. You can already see the change in the diagram of what it highlights, but obviously the key change is that higher native 6K resolution. The benefits include the ability to downsample to produce cleaner images, cleaner and sharper images in a 4K or 2K deliverable, reframing, rescaling, stabilization in post-production, creating multiple shots in one frame, and ultimately to ensure your work is future-proof. Pair the 6K with the larger Super 35mm sensor and you get incredible resolution in a compact form factor with access to a wide variety of cinematic EF lenses natively on the mount. This, as we previously mentioned, allows for that shallower depth of field and more notable bokeh. There is also the slight change in frame rates with 60 frames now available in the 6K resolution. I believe it's a 2.4:1 aspect ratio. So the Pocket 6K has been used fundamentally by creatives desiring cinematic aesthetics. Users include music video creators who often move into larger cinematic TV dramas and feature film productions, large-scale advertising commercial productions, including fashion and corporate events. And we've also seen a high amount of independent feature films that use the 6K due to the increased resolution and the Super 35mm sensor. So finally, we now have the Pocket 6K Pro. Nothing has changed from the 6K sensor or the core technological capabilities of the camera. The difference here is the inclusion of the internal motorized NDs. Putting the other additions of the 6K Pro brings aside, the NDs help the 6K Pro sit nicely in between the 6K and the G2 Ursa. As we've already explained, it acts as an alternate solution to the the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K by hosting some additional ergonomic features that can also complement a larger camera as well. So the 6K Pro and the 6K work really nicely with the G2 in the sense you can shoot that kind of 5.7 17:9 aspect ratio, which is the same aspect ratio shot at 4.6K in the Ursa. So again, for that downsampling, you're just using the same aspect ratio and that can work really well. The benefit of those internal motorized NDs was to allow the creator to shoot in wide aperture without overexposing, with the benefits of that shallower depth of field that is way more prominent in the Super 35mm sensor as well, and selective focus effects while under constrained lighting conditions without large external rigging issues. The other additional 6K Pro upgrades are obviously the new HDR screen with higher brightness. It's now on an articulating mount as well for better viewability of the screen. The battery pro grip and the new EVF, and this all really helps to boost that functionality and operability of the camera, keeping it in that form factor that we know our customers are really keen to be using. The internal NDs are the perfect complement to that 6K sensor. Again, we've worked with the IR on that to balance with our sensor, and they all work really well to give that full package of the camera. So the use cases we see with the 6K Pro, we kind of see it being, run and gun filmmaker, second or specialist cameras, documentaries or location scouts. Again, this will change as we see more use of the camera within, end users and see where they're using the cam. But we're really excited to see, the kind of uses of the 6K Pro and where it goes. So there's just a quick comparison showing, the core strengths of each of the cameras. I won't go into that in too much detail. Obviously, we've just touched on all that stuff. So I'm just going to finish us off on some customer use cases before we dive into the Q&A. So in this final section, I just want to highlight a few customer stories who've chosen Blackmagic Design for their creative work with complete end-to-end workflows from sensor to codec through to post-production. So we'll start by looking at cinematographer Martin Kavinsky and his wedding production company, KACO Films. Martin is an award-winning wedding photographer based in the Czech Republic, creating high-end cinematic wedding films all over the world, primarily on the Pocket 4K and using our entire workflow extensively and exclusively. Martin films in a documentary style to interrupt as little as possible and truly capture the emotional moments of such a special occasion that can never be recreated. He emphasizes his need for superb color grading and high image quality with a filmic look throughout his pipeline. Combine this need with the requirement for lots of storage to film an entire wedding. He chooses to film in B-raw for reduced file sizes whilst maintaining that incredible color fidelity and dynamic range. The entirety of his projects are edited and grading using DaVinci Resolve for a complete end-to-end Blackmagic design workflow. And again, you can really see where potentially that production value is going to be increased using something like that in that kind of environment. Another exciting story centers around a social media campaign for the Mercedes-AMG A-Class, which was shot by DP Matteo Bertoli with the Pocket Cinema Camera 6K in Blackmagic RAW. The entire project, shot on location in Frankfurt, Germany, involved tracking and lighting a moving car through the streets and traffic. Matteo utilized a native 6K resolution and dual ISO against minimal existing streetlights to help create the drama of nighttime driving shots, combined with a fluid contemporary dancer in some studio scenes as well. Matteo has used a Pocket Cinema camera for a long time, shooting B-raw 5:1 and 3:1 compression rates in 6K 240 at 48 and 24 frames per second, benefiting from the power of RAW in such small and efficient file sizes. It was again edited and graded completely with DaVinci Resolve Studio, providing that end-to-end workflow and consistency throughout the pipeline. A UK-based commercial agency, Still Moving Media, recently completed a project promoting the launch of a new Aston Martin Concorde edition with British Airways, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the iconic Concorde's first flight. Still Moving Media used the Pocket Camera 4K to deliver their client's vision of tracking and chasing an Aston Martin on a closed airfield. It was chosen for its compact design and lightness when rigging cameras directly to a vehicle, and still providing that internal RAW recording and ability to use EF lenses through a lens adapter for superior image quality. Still Moving Media were able to record to CFast in RAW via SDI direct to our own Blackmagic design video assist held by the first AD in the car. The performance and color science of the camera provided incredible creative options in post-production, with the project being fully edited and graded again in DaVinci Resolve for that full pipeline. And finishing off, a fairly high-profile case to end on involves the DOP John Brawley using a combination of our Ursa Mini Pro 4.6K G2 and the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. The Great is a 2020 satirical costume drama streaming on Hulu, and it's starring Ellie Fanning and Nicholas Hoult. Whilst John shot the majority of A-camera footage with the Arri Alexa SXT, he often used the G2 and the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K at the same time, shooting in Blackmagic RAW. As John mentioned, Blackmagic's range of cameras gave me the most flexibility and choice when approaching a shot. I can use any camera and know that I'll get great shots. An example would be when hero close-ups of Ellie Fanning was shot using the Pocket Cinema camera in handheld mode. This is a shot he couldn't have achieved with a bigger camera. And the images from the Arri and Blackmagic cameras were seamlessly matched in post-production, as he felt the looks, colours and dynamic range felt quite similar. And they did this using LUTs made in pre-production, again using DaVinci Resolve. And that brings us to an end on the presentation. And we will go into Q&A.
Cool. Thanks ever so much, Chris. That was really interesting and really good to see the differences between the cameras. And I think, in particular, the case studies at the end were really interesting. I've just mentioned that you, on the Great, that they were mixing Arri Alexa and Pocket Cinema camera and Ursa as well. It's not the first time that's happened. I speak to quite a few customers who are generally Arri shooters who will use the Pocket Cinema camera as their B cam or C cam because the RAW makes it so easy for them to match the footage. And I believe actually the last season of 24 did the same thing, but with the old Pocket camera, the little tiny one, running it alongside the Alexa. So cool. We do have some questions. I've got some questions as well. I hope you don't mind.
No, absolutely. Let's go.
Let's start with John Clayton. This is a good question because we didn't talk about we didn't talk about resolutions and frame rates that deeply, so I think this is quite a good question to come in with, and that's that if I just want to shoot ProRes 4K DCI on the 6K Pro, what is the crop factor? And am I losing any quality compared to shooting it on the 4K version of the camera?
So that is a good question. So ProRes, I will have to probably double check on that, but I don't believe that you can do 4K DCI in ProRes in the camera. I believe it is only UHD 3840.
Okay.
I mean, crop factor wise, obviously it's an EF mount, so you're looking at like a 1.5 times crop on that. I kind of go away from crop because really, I mean, what you're doing is looking at the field of view and how that lens will give you.
I think he means in comparison to the 6K resolution file, as in going to 4K, will he lose some of the field of view? I think that's what.
No. So we don't window. We only window in the sensor for the high frame rate stuff.
Cool. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Cool.
And also just rather than obviously just trying to detail all the kind of frame rates that are available within the camera in the different recording codecs, sure. If you jump onto our tech specs online on the product page, it lists literally everything, and you can also see data sizes and data rates as well of shooting in Blackmagic RAW. Okay,
well, that's good to know, because I think I'd like to have a deeper look at those frame rates. Just in your opinion, Chris, this is. I understand that this you might have to say a certain thing in terms of the performance in high frame rates. Is the slow motion from these cameras clean, or is it? Is there a reduction in quality? Obviously, there's a reduction in resolution, but is there a reduction in quality at all? Does it use line skipping or anything like that, or is it quite a nice solid? No.
No, yeah. So again, from my own personal use of the camera, it's a very clean looking, slowed down 120 frames. Obviously, you are windowing on the sensor, so you are losing a bit of resolution from the sensor, but obviously you're windowing to the resolution that you're then shooting at. Obviously, our sensors are really good sensors with great technology in there. So yeah, you shouldn't see any notable drop in quality.
Are there any limitations in terms of record times on any frame rates? No. Okay.
No, not at all.
These are pure cinema cameras then.
Yes. Again, it's fully designed for that. We don't do any forms of burst shooting.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So a couple of other questions. I think these are me questions more so than anything else as a WEX guy. Do camera cages accommodate the new battery pack? They will do. Eventually, we don't have them yet. I imagine that a small rig will make something. Will the 6K Pro with a grip go onto a gimbal such as the Ronin S? The Ronin S takes up to 3.6 kilos. Providing you're within that weight limit, then it should handle the weight. What would be more important for you to think about is whether it can handle the dimensions. You might need to look at extra bracketry. But Chris, in your experience, has a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, whether it's the 4K, 6K or 6K Pro, sat on a gimbal quite easily?
Yeah. I've used the 4Ks with the Ronin S's quite a few times. It does, obviously, just due to the body size of the camera, like you say, sometimes you do need to go for extension brackets just to allow for the actual mounting of the camera. But yeah, I've had some great gimbal work with the Pocket 4K. I will say that's probably 6 years ago now, but crazy amount of time ago. But yeah,
cool. This is a good question. I don't know if this is one we're going to be able to answer, but it leads us on to talk about something else quite nicely. Will Blackmagic RAW ever come to Final Cut Pro? And what I'm going to say to that is, you get DaVinci with the camera.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry too much about Final Cut. You can still cut in Final Cut. If you want that to be the end of your pipeline, I guess. But you can cut in DaVinci now, can't you? So
yeah, and I think that really shows again just where we're coming from from our point of view is that, you know, we want to ensure that end users have the tools to allow for their creative production. So you buy the camera, you get the software, and you know, that's the full studio license of the software, and that just ensures that, again, you know, using our technology in the camera, our technology in post, means that that pipeline, we've got so much control over it, and we can do things in DaVinci that are dedicated to the proprietary formats in the camera and the way it references the media and everything there. And for me personally, I mean, DaVinci's come on incredibly, you know, in the last few years. I think the functionality of it now and where it sits it's incredible.
Yep. I think that's something that we'll probably look at deeper at some point, Wex and Blackmagic together, presenting something to these guys about DaVinci, because I think it might make his Final Cut question null and void once he sees what he can do.
Let's hope.
Yeah. So here's a question. How about other options for lens mounts, PL and F, it says here. Now, in terms of adapting to PL, can we adapt that EF to PL? There might be some adapters out there, but the camera's available. The camera, the 6K Pro, is just an EF camera.
Yeah, we don't have any additional mounts for the cameras that we kind of sell as an optional accessory or anything like that. There probably will be third-party adapters out there that will do some of that.
Yeah, that question was from ASP Media. I just say to them as well that there are fantastic options now for EF mounted cine glass. You know, we have the Sigma Cines. There are the Zines. There are so many that I can't even remember them now. Zeiss CP3s, for example. So there's plenty out there that will let you use EF glass. Here's a question from Rob Harker. He says, does the IR on the ND provide a full cut of pollution?
That is a good question. And I would say so, but I wouldn't know for sure. So maybe if I can take that down and get back to you on email or on chat or something. But yeah, I would have thought so, just because, again, we've designed that with our sensor in mind to ensure for high fidelity. But
I'm going to say yes. I don't think we've seen IR pollution on ND filters for a long time now. So no. I think I would have thought so, but we can check and get back to you, Rob. One from Original 9. This is a good question. Is there a pocket cinema camera that can output 4K over its HDMI?
There isn't.
No,
there isn't. So that the whole pocket camera range output 1080p up to 60 frames through that HDMI. The reasoning behind that is, again, we're really considering the form factor of the camera. We're considering that you're getting internal raw recording in the camera, and you know, if you're wiring out to a monitor, it is normally just for monitoring, and you're not looking to record because you've got all those internal capabilities of the camera.
He did actually clarify that it would have been for virtual production usage. So I imagine he wants to go out to an ATEM or something. Never mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with the A10 mini range, they're all locked at 1080. So again, the camera fits in really well with those because they're HDMI based. They both work in the same resolution and frame rate outputs. And you now get camera control down that HDMI because we've got cross communication working down that HDMI. So yeah, it's not something that we have in any of the pocket cinema cameras at the moment.
Cool. Okay, just one. I think we've got time for one more question. That is from Byron Nicholson. How good is the quality of audio? Would I need an external audio recorder? I'd say no, but I'll hand over to
I'd say
Chris.
no. Yeah, I'd say no as well. I mean, these are the same professional preamps that are in the 6K and the 4K. It's a really professional connection. You know, it is an XLR connection. It is obviously on a mini size, but you're still getting that kind of professional input quality. So no, I don't see. I mean, my mic is literally plumbed into the camera now and being live streamed. So hopefully you're hearing good audio quality there. But that is going through a microphone directly into the camera and then obviously being streamed to you guys. So hopefully you're hearing really good audio quality there.
Good stuff. Cool. There was one last question from John Allen. What size sensor? Super 35 on the Pocket Cinema camera 6K. And I think
on the 6K and the 6K Pro.
And I think that's all we have time for now. So thanks ever so much, Chris. That was really interesting. Let's do this again with other Blackmagic products.
Absolutely.
And thanks to everyone who's been watching, and thanks to everyone who has asked questions as well. Cool. So keep watching our YouTube channel, and see you soon.
Thank you very much.